Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 Brooklyn Book Festival. I'm Andy Tepper. I'm co-chair of the International Committee of the festival, and it's a great pleasure, a great honor to be here with Arundhati Roy and Colson Whitehead. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention that the books by the authors are available for sale in the link below. And I will read, even though no introductions are necessary, I'll read quick bios of the two writers. Colson Whitehead is the author of 9 books of fiction and nonfiction, including the Pulitzer Prize winning novels, The Underground Railroad and The Nickel Boys. Harlem Shuffle, his new novel, will be published in 2021. Colson's a great friend of the book festival, and he was named the Bobby Prize winner in 2017. Thank you, Colson, for being here.
Hey, it's great to be back. I was here at the first one.
Yeah.
We're all still surviving, so
yeah,
it's exciting.
Great to see you. And Arundhati Roy is joining us from Delhi. What a pleasure. She is the author of the novels, The God of Small Things, for which she received the 1997 Booker Prize, and The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. A collection of her essays from the past 20 years, My Seditious Heart, was published by Haymarket Books last year. And as she says, it surprised even her that it was over 1,000 pages long. Her latest book is Azadi, Freedom, Fascism, Fiction, and it's just come out now this month. So it's a great pleasure. So the format is we'll do readings. Both authors will read from 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have a short time for a couple questions between the two. So Colson, do you want to take it away first?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, it's great to be back at the festival and to read with Arundhati. I'm gonna read from the Nickel Boys. I got the idea for the book a couple of years ago. I came across a news report about the Dozier School for Boys, which is a reform school in Florida, open for 111 years. And the idea behind the place was a very lofty one. How do we rehabilitate young offenders? We don't want to put them in prison with adult criminals. They'll become habituated. What if we had a separate facility where they could be with kids their own age, they could learn a skill, get education. When they came out, they'd be ready to rejoin society and be productive. But of course, when you get humans involved, something always goes wrong. And the school opened in 1900. By 1903, there were already reports of like 6-year-olds being held in solitary confinement, shackles. Every couple of years, it'd be an investigation, and they would talk about reform. Nothing would happen. And that was the cycle until 2011, when the school finally closed because it was just too egregious, the offenses. And in 2014, when I heard about the place, I came across this news report. They were going to sell the land. They were digging up the official graveyard, and they found a second graveyard of unmarked graves. 55 kids. Some of them had died of natural causes, and some of them had shotgun pellets in their chests. Some of them had blunt force trauma to their skulls, and had obviously been murdered. Over the years, the administration had said kids had run away, when in fact they were in the ground. They had a lot of survivors, adults, people in their 50s and 60s who'd been to Dozier when they were younger. And most of the survivors who talked were white, and I wondered what the Black part of campus might have to say. So that was the genesis, and I'm going to read a brief bit, mostly self-explanatory. The boys rooted for Griff, even though he was a miserable bully who jimmied and pried their weaknesses and made up weaknesses if he couldn't find any, such as calling you a knock-kneed piece of shit, even if your knees had never knocked your whole life. He tripped them and laughed at the ensuing pratfalls and slapped them around when he could get away with it. He punked them out, dragging them into dark rooms. He smelled like a horse and made fun of their mothers, which was pretty low given the general motherlessness of the student population. Griff stole their desserts on multiple occasions, swiped from trays with a grin, and even if the desserts in question were no great shakes, it was the principle. The boys rooted for Griff because he was going to represent the colored half of Nickel at the annual boxing match. And no matter what he did the rest of the year, the day of the fight, he would be all of them in one black body, and he was going to knock the white boy out. If Griff spat teeth before that happened, swell. The Nickel Academy was a reform school for boys, juvenile offenders, wards of the state, orphans, runaways who lit out to get away from mothers who entertained men for money, or to escape rummy fathers who came into their rooms in the middle of the night. They told stories about bloody pool hall fights or uncles who sold moonshine. A bunch of them were sent there for offenses they never heard of. Malingering, mopery, incorrigibility. Words the boys didn't understand either, but what was their point when their meaning was clear enough? Nickel. The combat served as a kind of mollifying spell to tide them through the daily humiliations. The colored boys had held the boxing title for 15 years, since 1949. Old hands on staff remember the last white champion and still talked him up, other things from the old days they discussed less often. Terry Doc Burns had been an anvil-handed good old boy from a musty corner of Sewanee County. He'd been sent to Nickel for strangling a neighbor's chickens, 21 chickens to be exact, because they were, quote, out to get me, unquote. Pain rolled off him like rain from a slate roof. After Doc Burns had returned to the free world, the white boys who advanced to the final round were pikers, so wobbly that over the years, tall tales about the former champion had grown more and more extravagant. Nature had gifted Doc Burns with unnaturally long reach. His legendary combo had swatted down every comer and rattled windows. In fact, Doc Burns had been beaten and ill-treated by so many in his life, family and strangers alike, that by the time he arrived at Nickel, all punishments were gentle breezes. This was Griff's first term on the boxing team. He'd arrived at Nickel in February, right after the graduation of the previous champ, Axel Parks. His emergence as the baddest brother on campus had made him Axel's natural successor. Griff was a giant, broad-chested and hunched like a big brown bear. His daddy, it was said, was on a chain gang in Alabama for murdering his mother, making his meanness a handed-down thing. Outside the ring, Griff made a hobby of terrorizing the weaker boys, the boys without friends, the weepy ones. Inside the ring, his prey stepped right up so he didn't have to waste time hunting. Like an electric toaster or an automated washing machine, boxing was a modern convenience that made his life easier. The coach for the color team was a Mississippian named Max David, who worked in the school garage. He got an envelope at the end of the year for imparting what he'd learned during his welterweight stint. Max David made his pitch to Griff early in the summer. My first fight made me cockeyed, he said, and my farewell fight set my eyes right again. So trust me when I say the sport will break you down and make you better, and that's a fact. Griff smiled. He pulverized and unmanned his opponents with cruel inevitability throughout autumn. He was not graceful. He was not a scientist. He was a powerful instrument of violence, and that sufficed. Given the typical length of enrollment at Nickel, sabotage by staff aside, most students were only around for 1 or 2 boxing seasons. As the championship approached, the boys had to be schooled in the importance of those December matches. The prelims within your dorm, the match between your dorm's best guy and the best sluggers from the other 2 dorms, and then the bout between the best black fighter and whatever chump the white boys put up. The championship was their sole acquaintance with justice at Nickel. Trevor Nickel had instituted the championship matches in 1946, soon after he came on as a director. Nickel had never run a school before. His background was in agriculture. He made an impression at clan meetings, however, with his impromptu speeches on moral improvement and the value of work, the disposition of young souls in need of care. The right people remembered his passion when an opening came up. His first Christmas at the school gave the county the chance to witness his improvements. Everything that needed a new coat of paint got a new coat of paint. The dark cells were briefly converted to more innocent use. And the regular beatings relocated to a small white utility building nicknamed the White House. Had the good people of Eleanor, Florida, seen the industrial fan that was kept in the White House to mask the sound of the screams, they might have had a question or two, but the shed was not part of the tour. Nickel was a long-time boxing evangelist, had steered a lobbying group for its expansion in the Olympics. Boxing had always been popular in the school, but the new director took the sport's elevation as his remit. The athletics budget, long and easy target for directors on the skim, was rejiggered to pay for regulation equipment and to bolster the coaching staff. Nickel had maintained a general interest in fitness. He possessed a fervent belief in the miracle of a human specimen in top shape, and often watched the boys shower to monitor the progress of their physical education. The director, Elwood had asked when Turner told him that last part. Where do you think Dr. Campbell got that trick from? Turner had said. Nickel was gone now, but Dr. Campbell, the school psychologist, was known to loiter at the white boys' shower to pick his dates. All these dirty old men got a club together, Turner said. Elwood had met Turner on his second day at Nickel. In the mess hall, which was loud with the rumble and roil of juvenile activity, Turner had bobbed in his own pocket of calm. Over time, Elwood saw that he was also always simultaneously at home in whatever scene he found himself in, and also seemed like he shouldn't have been there, inside and above at the same time, apart and apart. Now he and Turner were hanging out in the bleachers while Griff sparred with Cherry, a mulatto who'd taken up boxing as a matter of pedagogy to teach others how not to speak about his white mother. He was quick and lithe, and Griff clobbered him. Catching Griff at his regimen was a favorite occupation those early days in December. Boys from the colored dormitories made the rounds, as well as white scouts from down the hill who wanted the skinny. Griff had been excused from his kitchen shift since Labor Day to train. It was a spectacle. Max David kept him on a diet of raw eggs and oats and stored a jug of what he claimed was goat blood in the icebox. When the coach administered the doses, Griff swallowed the stuff with a lot of theater, then mortified the heavy bag in revenge. Turner had seen Axel fight during his first term at Nickel 2 years prior. Axel had been slow on his feet, but solid and abiding as an old stone bridge. He weathered what the skies decreed. Contrary to Griff, with his mealy disposition, he was kind and protective of the smaller kids. I wonder where he is now, Turner said. That nigga didn't have a lick of sense. Making things worse for himself, probably wherever he is. Cherry wavered and sank on his ass. Griff spat out his mouthpiece and bellowed. His friend and training companion, Black Mike, a wiry youth from Opelousas, stepped into the sparring ring and held Griff's hand up like Lady Liberty's torch. The likely white contender was a boy named Big Chet who came from a clan of swamp people and was a bit of a creature. Do you think he'll knock him down? Elwood asked. Look at those arms, man, Turner said. Those things are pistons or smoked hams. To see Griff quiver with unspent energy after a match, two little kids unlacing his gloves like retainers, it was hard to imagine how the giant could lose. Which was why, 2 days later, Turner sat up in surprise when he heard the school's superintendent, Spencer, tell Griff to take a dive. Thank you.
Thank you, Colson. Thank you. And Arundhati, what will you be reading from?
Well, I'm actually going to read from my novel, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. So this is towards the end of the book, it's chapter 9, and it starts with a quote from Baldwin, which says, "And they would not believe me precisely because they would know that what I said was true." The chapter is called The Untimely Death of Miss Jabin I. Ever since she was old enough to insist, she had insisted on being called Miss Jabin. It was the only name she would answer to, Everyone had to call her that. Her parents, her grandparents, the neighbors too. She was a precocious devotee of the Miss fetish that gripped the Kashmir Valley in the early years of the insurrection. All of a sudden, fashionable young ladies, especially in the towns, insisted on being addressed as Miss. Miss Momin, Miss Ghazala, Miss Farhana. It was only one of the many fetishes of the times. In those blood-dimmed years, for reasons nobody fully understood, people became what can only be described as fetish-prone. Other than the Miss fetish, there was a nurse fetish, a PT instructor fetish, and a roller skating fetish. So in addition to checkposts, bunkers, weapons, grenades, landmines, cassiopeas, concertina wire, soldiers, insurgents, counterinsurgents, spies, special operatives, double agents, triple agents, and suitcases of cash from the agencies on both sides of the border, the valley was also awash with nurses, PT instructors, and roller skaters. And of course, Misses. Among them, Miss Jabin, who didn't live long enough to become a nurse, nor even a roller skater. In the Mazar-e-Shahuda, the martyr's graveyard where she was first buried, the cast iron signboard that arched over the main gate said, in 2 languages, "We gave our todays for your tomorrows." It's corroded now, the green paint faded, the delicate calligraphy flecked with pinholes of light. Still, there it is after all these years, silhouetted like a swatch of stiff lace against the sapphire sky and the snowy saw-toothed mountains. There it still is. Miss Jabin and her mother were buried along with 15 others, taking the toll of their massacre to 17. At the time of their funeral, the Mazar-e-Shahuda was still fairly new, but was already getting crowded. However, the Intizamiya committee, the organizing committee, had its ear to the ground from the very beginning of the insurrection and had a realistic idea of things to come. It planned the layout of the graves carefully, making ordered, efficient use of the available space. Everybody understood how important it was to bury martyrs' bodies in collective burial grounds and not leave them scattered in their thousands like bird feed up in the mountains or in the forests around the army camps and torture centers that had mushroomed across the valley. When the fighting began and the occupation tightened its grip, for ordinary people, the consolidation of their dead became in itself an act of defiance. In the Mazar-e-Shahuda, on his wife's tombstone, Musa Yesvi wrote, Arifa Yesvi, wife of Musa Yesvi, and below that, Ab wahan khak udhati hai khizan, phool hi phool jahan the pehle. Now dust blows on autumn's breeze where once were flowers, only flowers. Next to it, on Miss Jabin's tombstone, it said, Miss Jabin, 2nd January 1992 to 22nd December 1995, beloved daughter of Arifa and Musa Yesvi. And then right at the bottom, in very small letters, Musa asked the tombstone engraver to inscribe what many would consider an inappropriate epitaph for a martyr. He positioned it in a place where he knew that in winter it would be more or less hidden under the snow, and during the rest of the year, tall grass and wild narcissus would obscure it, more or less. And this is what he wrote. Akh dalilawan, yatmans nakan balai as, na asu kuni janglas mans rozan. It's what Miss Jabin would say to him at night as she lay next to him on the carpet, resting her back on a frayed velvet bolster, washed, darned, and washed again, wearing her own peril, washed, darned, and washed again, tiny as a tea cozy, Firozi blue with salmon pink paisleys embroidered around the neck and sleeves, and mimicking precisely her father's lying down posture, her left leg bent, her right ankle on her left knee, her very small fist in his very big one. Ah, the Leela one, tell me a story. And then she would begin the story herself, shouting it out into the somber, curfewed night, her raucous delight dancing out of the windows and rousing the neighborhood. Yet mans na kaan balai asi, na asu kuni junglas mans Roseanne. There wasn't a witch and she didn't live in the jungle. Tell me a story, and can we cut the crap about the witch and the jungle? Can you tell me a real story? Cold soldiers from a warm climate patrolling the icy highway that circled their neighborhood cocked their ears and uncocked the safety catches of their guns. Who's there? What's that sound? Stop or we'll shoot. They came from far away and did not know the words in Kashmiri for stop or shoot or who. They had guns, so they didn't need to. The youngest of them, S. Murugesan, barely an adult, had never been so cold, had never seen snow, and was still enchanted by the shapes his breath made as it condensed in the frozen air. Look, he said on his first night patrol, 2 fingers to his lips, pulling on an imaginary cigarette, exhaling a plume of blue smoke. Free cigarette. The white smile in his dark face floated through the night and then faded, deflated by the bored disdain of his mate. Go ahead, they said to him, smoke the whole pack. Cigarettes don't taste so good once they've blown your head off. They did get to him eventually. The armored jeep he was riding in was blown up on the highway just outside Kupwara, and he and 2 other soldiers bled to death by the side of the road. In his village in Tamil Nadu, the Vanniyars, who were not untouchable, would not allow the body of S. Murugesan, who was, to be carried past their houses to the cremation ground. So the funeral procession took a circuitous route that skirted the village to the separate untouchables cremation ground next to the village dump. To commemorate S. Murugesan's valor, the army contributed towards building a cement statue of Sepoy S. Murugesan in his soldier's uniform with his rifle on his shoulder at the entrance to the village. Every now and then, his young widow would point it out to their baby, who was 6 months old when her father died. Appa, she'd say, waving at the statue, and the baby would smile, mimicking precisely her mother's wave, a fold of baby fat spilling over her baby wrist like a bracelet. Appa, 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 she'd say, smiling. Not everyone in the village was happy with the idea of having an untouchable man statue put up at the entrance, particularly not an untouchable who carried a weapon. They felt it would give out the wrong message, give people ideas. 3 weeks after the statue went up, the rifle on its shoulder went missing. Sepoy S. Murugesan's family tried to file a complaint, but the police refused to register a case, saying the rifle must have fallen off or simply disintegrated due to the use of substandard cement, a fairly common malpractice, and that nobody could be blamed. A month later, the statue's hands were cut off. Once again, the police refused to register a case, although this time they sniggered knowingly and did not even bother to offer a reason. 2 weeks after the amputation of its hands, the statue of S. Murugesan was beheaded. There were a few days of tension. People from nearby villages who belonged to the same caste as S. Murugesan organized a protest. They began a relay strike at the base of the statue. A local court said it would constitute a magisterial committee to look into the matter. In the meanwhile, it ordered a status quo. The hunger strike was discontinued. The magisterial committee was never constituted. In some countries, some soldiers died twice. The headless statue remained at the entrance of the village. Though it no longer bore any likeness to the man it was supposed to commemorate, it turned out to be a more truthful emblem of the times than it would otherwise have been. S. Murugesan's baby continued to wave at him. Appa, appa, appa. Thanks.
Thank you both. Yes, Colson?
No, I said, wow. Unfortunately, there are so many resonances between the boys and ministry.
Yeah.
It's all over the world. People act pretty terribly toward each other.
That's what I was going to ask just to begin. Arundhati, you mentioned the echoes in the two books, and I'm wondering what are some of the common influences and interests that connect your works. Arundhati, you sent a beautiful email where you mentioned that Colson's Underground Railroad it appears in your dreams, has haunted you. So yeah, what are the influences or ambitions that overlap and create a dialogue between your works?
Well, I guess, it is the writer's, sadly, the writer's fate to look at things with aching eyes and not to blink, and so I think that Underground Railroad haunted me also because, first of all, because of the writing and how beautifully it's described and the horror that it describes. But it also made me think about, how in India people have lived with the caste system, which continues to be the engine that drives Indian society. But there's nowhere to run to. They can't have an underground railroad, because it is so seeped into everybody's mind. And it's really like, if someone asks me to describe it, I just say, in India, people's minds are vertical, hierarchical, and structurally so, not just in a instinctive way, structurally so, also sort of from sacred texts. So how do you make a horizontal mind vertical? How do you turn hierarchies into solidarities when it seeps down from the top to the bottom, So, but I guess the complexities of both America and India, you're seeing it even now today. These two countries that are built on denying the horrors of what they consider to be civilization. And I think that's what connects, writers like Colson and me to look at that.
And I think if you're going to write about these subjects, you have to go all in with your eyes open, as you're saying. I think I've written about zombies and poker and slavery. And definitely the idea for Underground came out of just this very sort of whimsical idea. Oh, what if the metaphor of the Underground Railroad was real? But then you have to depict slavery in a realistic way, which means analyzing the structure, how it's perpetuated, how everyone's implicated, how is it tied to the history of the country, how does it reverberate through the decades, to now. So you have to be sort of, all in, and that means depicting these power structures in all their terrible efficiency and brutality.
Yeah, I wanted to ask
someone
you. Go ahead.
Someone like Harriet Tubman, I guess, in a way she was an underground, conceptually like an underground railroad, and there were connections made between people in India, like a very well-known anti-caste writer and activist called Jyotiba Phule, who really wrote beautifully about the connections between slavery and caste. But on the other hand, we have Gandhi, who has written in ways that are so derogatory about African people, both in South Africa as well as generally, and that intellectuals, even on the left, seek to look away from and continue to valorize someone, because we are so used to thinking about caste and accepting it, and trying to just elide it if it makes it us uncomfortable, or embrace it as people on the Hindu right do.
Colson, I was interested, you mentioned moving from the whimsical to the realism, writing with realism, and also you've written historical and contemporary. My question really is, how, to both of you, is how have the past 6 months, the pandemic, the protests, the political and natural disasters, made you rethink in any way how or what you write about? I mean, has it caused you to reconsider these questions of realism versus the supernatural, or historical versus contemporary writing?
Well, in terms of realism and fantasy, you picked the right tool for the job. So Underground Railroad, in order to have that conversation with history I wanted to have, required this fantastic Gulliver's Travels type structure. Whereas I knew with Nickel Boys, I wanted to focus on the two kids and their friendship. I knew it was going to be short and linear and didn't need any kind of fantastic structure. And so hence the realism. In terms of the last 6 months, I can't say, stepping back, how it'll affect me. But for me, it's the same old business. Growing up in New York in the 80s, and there's a high-profile police brutality case every 3 years. Eleanor Bumpers, Michael Griffith, and we talk about it, and then we stop talking about it. And definitely the last 10 years with the rise of cell phones, that's been a part of everyone's existence. Just how can we see these videos and not react? And finally, I think boiled over with George Floyd. But the interesting thing was that Nickel Boys came out in France and Spain this summer. And people would say, the book is so prescient. And it's not prescient if you write about fucked up racial shit. Probably chances are when it comes out, something will resonate with it, because these things are always happening around us, and so little changes. How much progress we make.
And Arunati, of course, for you, you've been writing nonfiction essays.
Well, what happened with the pandemic is something which I mean, all of us are still trying to deal with here in India, because it was like a autopsy of this place. I mean, of course, it's been so for everyone, but as you know, in India, Modi announced this lockdown with 4 hours notice, and suddenly you had what turns out now to have been 10 million people hidden away in the crevices of this society, who had no option but to begin to walk like thousands of miles home. It was like almost the largest kind of movement of human population in modern history. 10 million people, just walking thousands of kilometers. And right now, it's so hard to know how to think, because even as I'm talking to you, just like 5 minutes away from my house is a notorious police station where friends who I've known for years are being held, are being interrogated. There's a massive sweeping arrest of all activists who rose up against the anti-Muslim citizenship law. As you know, there have been hundreds of people lynched, Muslims lynched by mobs, and the lynchings put up on video on YouTube and things like that. So it's very, I mean, I have no idea exactly how to think or what to do, because the lockdown doesn't allow you to really easily move to look at the horrors that are happening. You had a prime minister who announced a lockdown as if he was the prime minister of Spain, saying, come out onto your balconies and, bang your pots and pans. But in India, a lockdown doesn't ensure social distancing. It ensures physical compression. It ensured the virus was spread to, every corner of this country now. And so I think my mind is in a mess right now, because I'm not sure how to deal with everything that's happening, and I don't have I can't just reach for a way of writing about it, because it's, it's like there are firing squads everywhere, so much crisis.
Yeah, in your essay, The Pandemic is a Portal, though, I mean, there are hopeful signs of the possibilities of something new, and it's something you end by saying, and we need to fight for it. We really need to.
Yeah, but the thing is that a lot of people took those 3 paragraphs from that essay and gave it legs and walk around like some little hippie paradise, that we need to fight for it was the key, and the point is right here. There's no, the government has suddenly changed the laws for agriculture, corporatized farming, privatized mining. It's for them, it's a portal to do everything that shouldn't be done, and people are locked up and unable to fight, unable to think, terrified of, the fact that the hospitals are full. There aren't any hospitals anyway for the poor. So, I'm a little irritated by the fact that, what happens with, I'm sure it's harder to do it with Colson's books, but certainly with me, they'll take out strands and then say, The God of Small Things, a lovely book about children, forgetting the fact that it's a brutal book about past, or, The Pandemic is a Portal is this little sort of bell bottoms with a halo around his head, and it's a portal, and let's all walk through. So there's a way of kind of just trying to topple a writer's work too. Forget about the talk in that article about the privatization of health, about what the free market has done to people in India. Forget all that and just go on and on about the last 2 sentences.
Sure, yeah.
Well, I don't think we have much time left, both of you, but I wanted to ask one last question, a very general and a lighter question. And it's really that, as a reader, I've grown up with your books. I mean, Colson, the John Henry Days, The Colossus of New York, and Arundhati, The God of Small Things, of course, made a huge impression. And I'm just wondering, how do you think, I mean, have you changed as writers over your career when you reflect on your writing? And have you written the books you first envisioned when you started writing more than 2 decades ago, or have there been surprises and detours along the way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, the success of Underground Railroad was unexpected. I thought I'll just do my usual thing, and I liked it. Doesn't mean other people like it. I've written books where I'm like, this is darn good, and then after a week, no one cares. And so, if you step back after 20 years, see my career's, gone up and down and taken different routes. I have like 2 ideas for 2 new books. I'm starting a new one now, and I'm very excited about it. Can I pull it off? It's complicated. So that fear is still there. Like, don't screw it up, Colson. Don't screw it up every day. It's like the little engine that could. And I think if that goes away, then I'm probably not doing the work. And so I think a little anxiety is good quality control. And in terms of the books I want to write, I'm really proud of what I've done. And then you think you're out of good ideas, and you're walking down the street and you see a magazine article or an image, and like, isn't that weird? And you sort of tease it out, and maybe it becomes a viable idea or it doesn't. But I love the challenge of the work still, 20 something years later. And I love not knowing if you're going to have a good idea come noon when you're walking down the street and see something and go, oh, well, maybe. And it becomes something, bigger than the afternoon.
And you, Arundhati, after God of Small Things?
Well, I was never someone who sort of set out to be anything. So when I wrote The God of Small Things, I was very it was pretty hard to deal with actually what happened with the book, because I live in India, and just at that time, India was changing, and I was just being, put forward like this little sort of
Mm-hmm.
parade of
Mm-hmm.
things that I didn't agree with or want to be part of, this whole Hindu nationalist
Mm-hmm.
New India project. And so I started writing politically, and then that sort of the backlash was so enormous, and
Mm-hmm.
also the embrace on the other side. So it made me somebody who just doesn't know from one day to the next what's going to happen or what I'm going to do. You know, like right now, all of us are just so braced for anything, you know, for arrest, for whatever, because the climate is such that it's pretty terrifying. So it's almost hard to have a long-term plan. And as I said, for me, even every political essay I write, you know, you have to take so many punches that you sort of say, okay, I won't do it again, and then, you know, something happens and you can't keep quiet. So I mean, to be honest, I have no idea like what I'm going to do. It's almost like you just don't know what's going to jump out at you from the next corner. So I'm just trying to keep my balance right now. So I don't know.
But you did say that your second novel was germinating for a long time while you were writing the essays.
Yes, I worked on the Ministry of Utmost Happiness for a long time, because you know what happens is the fiction, I enjoy writing it so much that I almost don't want to finish. I want to live in the world of the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Right now, I mean, of course, as you know, most of it is about this guest house in the graveyard where every room has a tomb, and there's a continuous kind of osmotic relationship between the dead and the living, and these conversations go on. And I feel right now that that's all I'm interested in, the etiquette of the graveyard, you know, like isn't that what the world is right now? That's what we've made it into. So let's just figure out how to behave in it, you know. But I mean, to answer your question honestly, I don't know a thing about myself next week or tomorrow even.
Yeah. Well, I love the essay where you talk about the characters who started populating your apartment or your home.
Yeah.
They came to live with you.
They just came to live with me, and then, you know, they continue to. That's also one thing that, you know, the characters from The God of Small Things, the Ministry, they just don't go away. They just always around. They're not projects, you know, they're just part of me. So somehow the idea of even like a place like Kashmir, which people call Jannat, which means paradise in Urdu, and that is a Jannat covered with graveyards. And then you have in Delhi the Muslim graveyard with the Jannat guest house run by this character called Anjum, who collects people around her, and these conversations between these graveyards, somehow I find it very comforting. And it also helps you to live in that place where you're fearful but not terrified, you know, like, okay, so what are you going to do to me, you know? I have to keep writing, and I won't be completely impetuous or irresponsible, but you know, the climate is terrifying here right now. So
well, thank you both. Be safe and
thank
be
you
well.
Guys. Great to see you.
It's been a real pleasure.
Bye,
And
Colson.
And Colson, looking forward to your new book.
Hope you like it. Everyone stay safe. Mask it or casket, as they say.
So just remember the books are for sale at the link, and please consider just a note, making a donation to the book festival, which is celebrating its 15th year of presenting free literary programming. So thank you again, both Arundhati and Colson. Be well, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Be well. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.